Yeah, it's a
So,
really fantastic film. It's very different for you, as I'm sure you know or have been told. Um, what kind of got you interested in doing like a love story based on this particular book and adapting this book?
yeah,
Can you talk about that first?
uh, yeah, absolutely. First of all, yeah, it is different for me, especially when it comes to, what I'm known for in the US, because before I started making films, I made a lot of theater. I did Shakespeare and Chekhov and all kinds of things which are more dramatic and less on the action and survival part. So it is a part of my body of work, but not maybe as much on the national international stage. But I still hadn't done really love stories, apart from my first film, because one on Reykjavik is a black comedy about love, which is a very different approach.
Mm.
But as we get older, we realize, love of your children, love of your partners or family becomes a bigger issue to you. I at least in my life, it becomes a bigger part of your life and more important part of your life. You realize how important that is, and maybe the need, because you're always mirroring yourself through your work, like in some way or other. I haven't been making films about me, but every film I made is about me, because it's about my state, it's about where I'm sitting, where I'm thinking. Even when you make action film, you still infuse something of yourself into it. That's the only point of making it. So when I came across this story, like there's something about the gentleness of how it's approached, how one man's life is affected by this, unsuspected and unforeseen reasons from the Second World War in way later, and learning about other people's culture and tragedies through him, I thought was a beautiful way of telling story. And also finding I often feel like there is Romeo and Julia, they have the obstacle of the families not hating each other. You need a good obstacle. If not, you have a marriage story. If you're going to have, the missed opportunity or story. So I felt this was really well done by the author, Ólaf how he woves this. And I loved the mystery of it. So it has those elements. And when I read the book, I couldn't put it down, to be honest. In a gentle way, it wasn't like a thriller or something like that, but it was a page turner at the same time. So I know it's a long answer, but that's the reason.
So tell me, I assume your father's been as long as you've been alive, your father's been making movies. I know you've kind of been involved. You've kind of been a PA on some movies. You've made appearances, roles. For this one, I mean, did you know he had found the book and was reading the book? Did you kind of like read the book yourself and say, "Hey, I might be interested in this"? Like, how were you pulled into this? Were you actually did he ask you to do it, or did you kind of just like go out for it?
Well, my dad read the book around Christmas 2021, and I read the book, I think 3 or 4 months later. It was by coincidence. It was just for a school project, actually. I was assigned the book. Um, and yeah, I mean, when I read it, that's not what was going through my head. I think, um, yeah, I was drawn into it more by circumstance than anything else. It was a so the casting director called me and said, "Do you want to audition for this role?" And I think I was just at a phase in my life where I was trying to say no, or trying to say no less. Um, not,
I know that
yeah,
feeling. I know that feeling for sure.
yeah, yeah. Uh, and um, and yeah, I mean, it's not what you know, yeah, it wasn't my intention when I read the book, for sure. But
I
then
had no
I
idea about this either, by the way. I had no idea that, like, it was actually, truthfully, the casting director's idea. We had exhausted the Icelandic kind of acting pool on his age bracket, and it was a total surprise to me. And Palmi, even though he was in film when he was like 10 or 12, he played smaller parts in two or three films, but after that he didn't really act. So I just didn't think he even wanted it, to be honest. But then I did not think he had chops to do it, to be honest. And I say that as a father, you think you know your children, And it surprised me just as much as everyone else when the casting tapes came in. It's like, oh shit, what do I do now? He's perfect for the role. Because it comes with a lot of, oh, you're casting your son, but you just have to go by your instinct. And here's the thing. The last thing I want to do to my children is put them in a situation they shouldn't be in, So you have to be that's even more important to me than failing as a film director, It is more important, to protect my children in the way that they're not put in a situation they shouldn't be in,
But I also think since you know each other so well, it must be when you're on the set, it must be like, you must know how to get a performance out of your son. Your son must know when his father is saying different things or being, you know each other so well that it must be like some way a little easier to work together.
Both ways, in some ways it's also because of you know each other so well and you have a different relationship, it can be complicated. And I think we run into that a couple of times where, like where we and to learn how to work together as grown-ups, not as father and son, because you have to meet in some way as equals, even though the director has maybe a little more say in how things have to go down. You still have to respect and meet each other. And I think for both of us, that's a very interesting state, you have to look at just your son as a grown man and respect his opinions and how he wants to go about things. And at the same time, he also has to, not be annoyed that his father is telling him what to do. So I think it's a very interesting. It was and very pleasant, to be honest. I didn't know because and I say this with all the respect and love. Palmi is one of my most difficult children. It's a very complex character. So it wasn't like I wasn't sure how it was going to be. Because we have had our differences through the years, as most children and parents do.
Palmi, I feel like I should give you a minute to respond to that. Maybe because I watched debates last night, so
yeah. I had a great time doing the film, and yeah, it's of course there's going to be minor disagreements and stuff like that when you're working in a creative, I guess you would say, collaboration. But for me, it went over very smoothly, and I don't think that I would have done anything like this with. I mean, I was stepping out of my comfort zone, already just going to the audition, and I don't think I would have trusted many other people, to do this with other than my dad. So. Yeah, I think in ways, of course, the dynamic of a father-son relationship is unhelpful, but in other ways it was very helpful.
yeah, I mean the film and the story, it's really interesting collaboration between like Iceland and Japan. It really deals with both things, even though Iceland's not as much in the movie so much. It is the culture. But I wonder if you could both talk about the Japanese culture and the food and any kind of research you did. Dealing with your dealing with Koki as an actor, dealing with a Japanese actor as well. Can you both talk about that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that was it was a huge undertaking. We had actually had the opportunity. We went to Japan together when I was releasing Everest there, and I took my family with me, and Palmi and his brother, and we were all kind of and even more Palmi than me, like absolutely blown away by the Japanese culture. He can tell you more about that himself, And it stayed with us, this journey, quite a lot. And then when this came along, having that fascination and having that experience, having been there and seen that, it just drew me more into it. And I went there to scout and to learn, and we pulled in every favor of a Japanese person in Iceland and around Europe. And it's very, very complicated. But we went to the deepest to research, to bring in the right people, to be culturally appropriate, and I really wanted to do this right and bring in Japanese people who would help me steer this in the right way, And the author actually, I don't know if you know this, but he used to run Sony, the author of the novel, Ólafsson.
Oh.
therefore he spent so much time in Japan, and that's why I think the story is so well researched from his behalf. But you know, when it comes to a restaurant, Japanese restaurant in London in '69, you don't have much to go by. But we
Right.
found people who actually, quite old Japanese people who ran a place in London during that time, one of the first Japanese restaurants. And we got a lot of information from them. So yeah, we did, it was incredibly complicated. And people, you know, think it's a, you know, small Icelandic film or whatever, but it's probably one of the most complicated I made, just as, if not more complicated than Everest.
Gotcha. Yeah. What about working with Palmi? Maybe talk about working with Koki and doing scenes with her. I mean, how did you guys were you guys able to communicate? I mean, she doesn't have a lot of experience acting either, so it's kind of like interesting to have these two very young young people just kind of like creating these characters. Can you talk about working with her? Did you communication? Did you guys spend a lot of time offset, kind of just trying to get to know each other more? Or
Yeah, so we went to we started shooting in London, and we went there 2 weeks earlier, just to do prep and rehearsals and stuff. And yeah, we got to know each other there. That was very pleasant. I think she handles the role in a very well. She comes off, you know, in the movie as very, you know, forward and frank, but I think she handles the role in a very delicate and refined manner. Maybe we related on the basis that we didn't have, you know, any major films, you know, on our backs. But yeah, it was quite enjoyable, and also just to gain insight into, you know, a person who's from this culture, even though she wasn't, you know, born in 1969. I think it provides insight into the role as well, getting to know her.
yeah, can you talk
Yeah.
about oh, sorry, go ahead, finish up.
No. So that was the end.
No, but it also was interesting that the Japanese people, you know, and Koki and all this, they also didn't know much about the Shibakusha, you know, thing. You know, young people in Japan are not necessarily so much versed in this Hiroshima drama as we might think. So that was very interesting as well for them to dig into that and learn about it, you know.
Gotcha. Yeah, you have a Japanese casting director who actually cast herself as the older Miku, which also
No,
is
she
also
didn't, she
amazing,
didn't cast
amazing.
herself. She didn't cast herself. I cast her. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
she was reading up, you know, here's the what we are dealing with is that, you know, the older generation of Japanese actresses do not speak English at all, most of them. So we were it was very complicated and difficult to find someone because she had lived in England and had to have very strong English, you know. And it's much more complicated than people realize to find that. And so we were doing these readings and yeah, we had some interesting options. But I always got like, she's reading with the actresses, and she was always doing the best reading, you know, like and for part of it, she looked wonderful. So I was like, why don't you just read for the role? And I love to go by my instinct, and because, you know, it is the strongest tool you have. It's like, what this is, she's reading it like it should, and she looks like I can see her. And then she read and was like, me and my Goodridge, my partner, you know, producing partner on the film, was like, we were both like, there she is, you know. She was very shy about it because it felt like she was overstepping the actors she had been testing, but it was like, there was no way I was going to back out of that. So, you know, like, yeah, it's such an instinctual part of movie making is casting.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say the scene between her and Eagle, I mean, I was in tears. I was literally almost crying. But I gotta say, I mean, you've been making movies for a long time in Iceland and in Hollywood. You produced movies. You have to imagine a movie like this is pretty risky. I mean, it's based on an Icelandic book. Maybe people don't know. Most of the cast, almost anyone in the cast, people know. In Japanese might know Koki from her singing career and modeling, but it's really amazing. Why, as a filmmaker, did you say, I'm going to take this risk? I like this book so much and I want to tell this story and may take this risk on a movie like this?
Instinct.
Oh, okay.
It's just, I do not want to be calculative when it comes to my choices. I just want to go by what I feel like, this is a good story. I want to tell this story. And I will live with the risks, you know, of that. You know, it's just, there's no other choice for me. If that makes any sense, you know, is that basically, yeah, this, I need to do this. Let's do it, you know, and then we live with the consequences of it, you know. And the
Right.
same with in Palmi, you know, like it's of course you get nepotism and all that, you know, you get all on your back. But the fact is, I was 100% sure that he was right for the role, and I couldn't back out of it, and even to the state that I was kind of nervous if he would do it, to be honest, you know, because he was kind of wobbly about whether he should do it for a while, you know, because he hadn't done, and I was like, shit, what happens if he doesn't do it, you know? So I don't have a second. I didn't have a second choice. So it is always risk. And that's what's so wonderful about this, you know, and we do fail badly. That's the fact. You know, we are executed once in a while by people who write about it, but you know, sometimes we get it right as well. And I that's part of the, you know, part of the job, I guess.
Well, I'm sure I've told you this before, but I hope they do a retrospective of your films in New York someday, because I think it'll be such an interesting retrospective. It'd be like Whiplash, going from one movie to the next movie, It's amazing. It's amazing. You know, you made some amazing films, and this joins them because it's so different and it's such a wonderful love story as well. So.